Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you got your name up in lights and everything. Andrea, before we get into all the questions that we've got, and by the way, everybody, if you've got questions for Andrea, please put them in the chat box. Just introduce yourself, Andrea, just so people know who it is that they're getting their wisdom from.
Sure. So you said I'm an international brand leader, CMO level. So to give a little bit of more context, I work with CEOs in the media and entertainment industry to help them generating incremental revenues out of their brands in excess of $30 million annually. And I do that by creating and then implementing insights-informed revenue-enhancing strategies for their brands and leading their implementation across regions.
Okay, you say insight. For me, that's basically customer listening, isn't it? It's just really paying attention to what the customers like and applying it. And obviously, when you work for businesses as large as the businesses you've worked for, being able to do that well, tens of millions of dollars will flow from the magic. Big stuff, right? So you are international brand leader, CMO, top of the tree in your space. What kind of people do you hire? Who sits underneath you? What kind of jobs do they do?
I run a full marketing organization. So I would look in my space, I would look for brand directors or anything between director, manager, and so on. More generalist marketing managers, especially in the latest times. I will also look for a lot of digital skills. So both in general digital skills, but also a lot about content production and content distribution. That's very critical to the space where I operate. And lately, which might be surprising for some people, a lot of data analysts and people that help me extracting those insights from numbers as well as from other forms of research.
Cool. Okay, so brand and marketing and digital and content and data. That sounds like a pretty high-performing marketing setup to me. No surprise, given the level that you operate at. So let's get down to brass tacks then, Andrea. What's the difference between a really great version of one of those jobs or person doing that job and perhaps just a regular person? They can all do it, but some people just do it better, don't they?
Yeah. And let's go back to the purpose, right? The purpose of these roles is to help me, as we said, generate revenues incrementally to what would have happened without our roles. And doing that by developing and implementing those strategies. So clearly, I'm looking for people that can do that. But I'm looking also for people, to me, the greatness comes from the fact that they might be able to add value beyond that and really be instrumental in the transformation of an organization and moving things forward.
Hold on, Andrea. You know, the amount of times I've read add value and contribute to transformation, excuse my language, that's just a fucking yawn fest, isn't it? HR put that on every job description I've ever read. What does that actually mean?
Well, it means that, I can do my job better by having the great people and building a team that is highly effective. But also I can show that the value of the team is not limited to the tasks that we've been given. So I want people that are open-minded, that can stretch their skills beyond what is formally asked from them.
What kind of things are we looking at then? How does that manifest itself? Rock in and say, I can do the job same as the next person, but I've also got this I bring to the party. What is that?
But the starting point, I would guess, is a sense of curiosity and the willingness of learning what's beyond what we do, right? Understanding the broader context, because that allows you to do a better job in what you are tasked to do, but also to provide input into things that, if you're bold enough to speak up, that might be helpful to other people in the organization.
Okay, some curiosity then. That's a nice trait to have, and I think actually are wonderful to have if you're in marketing. So how do you find out who's great and who's not?
So I was lucky enough to work in large organizations, so I always had a lot of support from the HR department. So they would help me selecting among all the candidates that put themselves forward for a role. They will help me selecting the people that are on paper through their CV and maybe following a brief conversation with the HR team, the right skills that are required for the role.
Okay.
They will present to me a short list of the people that they think, among all the ones that they applied, that could fit the role. And then it's my task to review those CVs and trying to understand a little bit more about the person. So at that point, I need to trust that the HR team has done a good job in selecting people that technically have the skills to do the job. And I need to go beyond that and find the people that have the right attitude, the right curiosity, that I think can stretch themselves more than what the role allows, to go back to what I was saying, the ability of being curious and adding value beyond what the role requires, if possible. So doing those things, and it's quite hard to do that from a CV, which is a dry document to some extent. So it comes out from an interview, which is the best way of getting to know the candidates and understanding whether they're fit for a purpose or not.
Okay, so in the interview then, what are you looking for to help you understand that they can do? Obviously, they can tick all the boxes because HR have screened them for that. That's fine. But you're looking for that curiosity. You're looking for that ability to add value beyond the technical remit of the job. You do that via an interview process because you're pretty much impossible to do that from a CV.
Yeah.
How does that interview manifest itself? What happens in the interview so that you can get to the end of it and go, yeah, okay, now I've understood what I need to know, and either they do or don't have what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. So the interview it's very important for me, and I'm quite excited every time I'm in front of a candidate and we can have that conversation. For me, it's very much a two-way conversation in which I provide as much context as possible, and I try to explain what a day in the life of the job could be. Would be that to me is instrumental in getting then out of the candidate how would they behave in that day in the life, right? And I want to go beyond what's written on paper and really understand the motivation, the attitudes, the ability of contributing and interacting with me, challenge me or not. So really getting to know the person and trying to understand who is going to be, if your candidate you're interviewing with me. I want to understand who is the person that will come to the office every day or to work every day, because of course the interview is an artificial setting, right? I'm trying to show the best of me, and you candidate are trying to show the best of you, and I like to go beyond that and really understand. Sometimes you get surprised. You see someone in an interview and you think, okay, and then they show up at work and you get to know them better, and they're not quite what you expected. So I try to create an environment that allows me to see through the artificial element of the interview. I also try to fight my own biases. So that we are more inclined to align ourselves with the people that think like us. And that's not necessarily something that I want from the people that work for me. I want a team that is made up of diverse people that bring different perspectives. So I don't necessarily want a clone of me or a clone of other people that I have in the team. So the interview also helps me understanding, is that person bringing something to the team that is slightly different from what I have already, or that complements either my skills or my way of doing things and thinking, or the way of other members of the team, so that really we come stronger thanks to the diversity of thinking.
I would imagine that if I was a senior person reporting into the CMO, coming in for a senior job interview, that I'm probably going to be in interview mode,
Mm-hmm.
a bit more polished and a little bit more careful about my language. And you're going to seek to change the dynamic of that conversation and break down some of the initial interview barriers, so that you get a more accurate representation of how they're going to show up each day in the job. And you're going to get probably one of two responses to that. You're either going to get people who are resistant to it and want to stay in interview mode and stay on track and not give too much away, or other people who are going to immediately fall into, oh, good, this is a much more relaxed conversational style, and we can perhaps be a bit more authentic. And I imagine it's not that difficult then for you to make your decision, because those two things are fairly polar opposite in terms of just response to that style of interview process.
Yeah. And that already tells me something, right? So it tells me something about the person, right? So if you can adapt to the way I'm managing the interview, You already show me that you're probably, organizational savvy. You have a way of dealing with people that is flexible and sort of open-minded, which are all traits that in a complex organization like the ones I've been part of are really, really important. There's a ton of stakeholders to manage. You in roles like mine or the people that work for me, you're highly visible. You need to be comfortable with a lot of people. So if you're not comfortable in an interview setting with me, that already tells me that maybe you won't be in the environment that I know you'll be part of if you succeed in the interview process. So that already, for me is already polarizing and telling me the people I should gravitate towards or not.
I know one of the sort of popular techniques in interviews to mirror the interviewer and try and be a little bit like them, but you actively seek alternatives to you. You try to avoid your cognitive bias. I think that that sort of not valuing or not leveraging mirroring and expecting someone to be authentic would be it's going to be challenging for some people, but for the few, they're going to instantly gravitate to, great, I can just be me. Bringing me into the party is actually what you're looking for. But you can have a degree of self-confidence there, haven't you? That actually, not mirroring the boss, not being like the rest of the team is the right thing to do. So you can have a team of quite confident, self-assured people working for you, which I imagine is a challenge to be the boss at that point in time.
Well, it's like I like that for a number of reasons. The first one is I want to be challenged, right? And again, if I have mini me's, it doesn't really challenge me. We got a group of people that thinks the same, behave the same, and I don't think is necessarily the best thing to have, right? Apart from the technical skills that some of these roles, being different, might have. So that I don't think is particularly productive. So that's why I look for that diversity. But I also look at two things. One, the opportunity of learning from my team, not only me mentoring and coaching, but also not the other way around. But if you bring something new that I might not be as familiar with, that's a learning experience for me. I've learned from interns as well as my bosses, right? And that's fine. The other element is that I actually like to be challenged, and I like that having a team that feels comfortable to tell me that what I think might not be the right thing, or there's another way of doing things, or there's another way of approaching a problem. I like that. So I don't like, again, that helps me with producing a better outcome out of the work that we do as a team.
You remind me.
Just let me finish on this, please. I also like the idea of feeling the pressure of someone that might be me in terms of the role. In a little while, because it keeps me on edge, and it gives me, I never want to feel complacent, right? And having someone that's like is pushing upwards gives me that little kick, right? That every now and then you need. So absolutely, I want a team of superstars, and I want a team of people that one day could do my job.
It's one of the traits they say about great leaders is that they rise by lifting others up underneath them. And if everybody goes up, then you're in good shape. You remind me a little bit of a character in a television show that I'm a huge fan of, The West Wing. It's about the presidency of the United States. In the middle there, they're hiring a new person who's having a bit of a disaster of an interview because the president's in a bad mood. But someone reassures the candidate that actually, when the president's less angry about something, mainly he likes to hire smart people who disagree with him, and the rest of it's bullshit. That's it. That's all he wants, is smart people that disagree with him, because there's a chance to learn something and get better, rather than be surrounded by sycophants who are kissing his ass. So, okay, good. Now, earlier we talked about CMO and international brand leader, but I know a little bit about marketing, just a tiny bit, and I recognize that actually, strategically, those two things are quite different. In fact, marketing is more tactical than strategic. How do you balance that the tactics versus the strategy, the marketing versus the brand, the horizons? Brand is kind of quite long term and overarching, whereas marketing.
I built a process to be able to have the two perspectives to run in parallel. And I always say we are normally operating in constantly into 3, 4, 5 different time frames. Let's simplify for a second. Like the first time frame is you look way beyond into the future and try to prepare yourself for everything that needs to happen in 2-3 years, and you got that strategic oversight. That is really very much the brand work that you mentioned, thinking about the equities and the things that need to happen for the brand to be delivering revenues and incremental revenues over a long period of time. And then you're sort of in the pre-planning mode, which is, there are things that to get there you need to do in the next few weeks or months, and so you're more in the implementation side of things, and that's where the different skills of the team come into place, because maybe I'm more spending time on the looking forward, and the team is more spending time on the what needs to happen very soon. And then, of course, you're also at the same time monitoring what's happening in real life. We talked about data analysts. So, are the sales going the way that we want to do? So this is like looking in the now and a little bit beyond to understand that what we're doing and what we've been planning is working, and give me insights if we need to course correct something. So always operating at these 3 different levels with processes that help with the making sure that you're not missing any opportunities, whether it's on the planning side and the brand side, or the operational side and the activation side, or the analysis. So they all feed each other in a very productive way.
So depending on the nature of the job, what you might be looking for is a thinking or an intellectual horizon that's different. Data analysts need to be quite contemporary in their thinking. Brand strategy seems to be a bit more future thinking. And so you'll hear that in the language, won't you, in terms of how people talk about, whether they talk about the now or whether they talk about the future. What about in interview then? Some other things we can talk about, sort of the traps that people fall into, or the tips that you can give them when they're interviewing with a CMO like you. What do you look for there?
Well, it comes from what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. I like people to be authentic. I like people to be the true self when they come to see me, and I want them to be comfortable. I want them to be at ease. So if that doesn't happen, as we discussed earlier, already there's a little disconnect that give me pause for thought. So what I normally react badly to is people that only speak in theoretical terms. So they'll come and so answer a question reciting like a book of marketing, or that I like more real examples. Show me what you've done. Show me what impact you've made in your previous roles. Give me real examples on how you solve a problem. And if we're talking about something hypothetical, just show me the way you think, not what you learned in a book. So that doesn't necessarily work for me. The other thing that I react normally quite badly to is overly aggressive people. Of course you're in an interview, of course you're selling yourself, and I'm the buyer, as you were mentioning earlier in the program. But just don't be too aggressive in the sales. It just rubs me off the wrong way. So again, it's a question of being authentic, be confident. Confident is fine. Aggressive, not so much with me. So don't be too pushy. Just be yourself. Be relaxed. Show me what you got. And let's have a good discussion about how you can add value to the team and to what we do.
Cool. I've got a question from one of the listeners, from Andrew. How do you make sure your HR department is inclusive in seeking candidates with more than just the skills required? Is there something in the CV that you're paying attention to? So there's a couple of questions there. I would imagine HR's inclusivity processes are something that don't need your input. They'll make sure that happens anyway. But is there, once they've done that sift and the technical skills are there, is there anything in particular that you have a quick glance at CVs and go, you know what, these 6? Is it geography? Like, let's get people in from different parts of the world, or is it different industries, or what do you look for that goes, yeah, that's what
that's a good. Let's unpick that. There's a lot here. So diversity, absolutely. I thought I talked about more diversity of thinking rather than diversity in terms of beliefs, so I normally involve other people in the interview process because of that awareness of the unconscious bias that you have by liking the people that think like you. Cool. So I normally have a one or another two people that will be involved in the process, so that I can have different points of view that are not just mine on prospect candidates. And within the people that I would have with me, I would make sure they have diversity. So, for example, I would have a woman for sure to help me in the interview process. No matter who the candidate is, I would have a woman, and I have other form of representation. I would include that, so that we can have a hopefully unbiased common opinion, and then we compare notes and we check that. So that's sort of from a process perspective, if you want. And then in terms of a couple of things that might be useful, just because of the nature of the work that I've been doing, I've been mostly operating in regional, since I moved to London 23 years ago now. I've been in regional or international roles, so always managed what should be a multicultural team. And I say what should be because I inherited some teams that were managing countries from the UK that were only made up of British people, which I don't think is necessarily wrong, but at the same time, if you're interacting with, in many cases, at a certain point, I was working with 27 other countries, and they only interact. Okay, I'm Italian, but with all Brits, there's something that doesn't sound authentic. Can Brits really understand the nuances, the differences? Do they have the if it's all made of British people? So that cultural understanding is something I would look for. And it might come from British people if we're based here, but it might also come even more so from people from abroad, or have an international experience. So that's very important for the roles that I played in international and global and regional in the regional context.
Thanks,
there was something else in our words. There was another thing to unpick, but I can't remember.
I want to talk to a question that cropped up then. So, I mean, marketing is a horizontal function rather than an industry vertical one. And so how important or not is industry expertise in an industry like media and entertainment? You're head of digital. If I don't know anything, or if I've never worked in media and entertainment.
This goes personal, right? I'm not representing an industry necessarily, but this is what I think, right? I am a big believer on that you don't really need industry expertise. There are exceptions, of course, but at least in the world I'm part of, you can learn it very, very quickly. I didn't come to this industry with industry expertise. I built it over time. So I'm very open to people that come from other industries, and I still believe that skills are transferable, and it's fine. And actually, having someone with a fresh point of view on things that I've been looking at for 23 years or 25 years might bring a lot of advantages. So I don't think is necessary. But also the industry has evolved over time, and people tend to underestimate the number of or the amount of data that we look at, the science that we apply to selling a movie, for example. People are not familiar with that. So that might be surprising, but that because it's probably an evolution that over time the industry has taken to be much more data-driven or informed and insights-informed, that those skills might not come from the industry. So it's a good thing that you bring people from outside the industry that might have the skills and that can help the work to progress more at a quicker speed than if you didn't have those external skills. There are areas in which maybe coming from the industry has some advantages. For example, I find that working on PR and communications is so critical to what we do that you need to be able to deal with talent and be on the call every day and deal with emergencies that they're not life-threatening, but in our business is very important. So that area might be more an area you might need some industry expertise, or you need to be able to do those.
In the entertainment and media industry was high maintenance, eh? No.
At times, I can tell stories.
No, I get that. That's probably not something you want to try and attempt to do from outside the industry. That's you need some experience at that, because that's about the people in media and entertainment people, particularly the people who are creating films and stuff. That they're a particular breed of people, aren't they? They're very creative. perhaps a little bit otherworldly, and it just takes some experience on how to handle them.
Yeah, but you're right. That's the way it was when I started in the business, but it's become much more, in a good way, process-driven and a little bit more formal than you would expect. And as I said, much more data-informed than it used to be. So there's both elements need, which, at times clash. I have this experience at some point when I was at Universal Pictures. Universal Pictures was bought by General Electric, and General Electric came with like, this is the way we do things. Like we are Six Sigma, we do this process, and the two cultures were clashing completely. In reality, the good thing was in the medium, right in the middle. You could bring that creativity to one side, and you can bring a more process-driven way of doing things, and provided that you don't push it too much, actually works very well. And I am a big fan of that middle ground.
Okay. A question in from a Facebook user here says, one of the solutions that firms have adopted due to the war for talent is to request employees to refer friends and colleagues. But surely this just ensures you get more people like the ones you have already, which is a kind of a decreasing circle of diversity. We can keep this answer short because my virtual producers give me the wind-up signal because I'm supposed to have a live show in about 5 minutes' time. So just, do you like the referral scheme? Because
I do. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that you would only attract people that are similar to the people you have already. One can refer people who are not like that. I like it. It saves time and money if you get referrals and you don't use recruiter. So I'm open-minded to that. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't necessarily have the experience that by going through referrals you get more of the same. I don't recognize that yet.
Cool. And last question: what are the questions you'd like an interviewee to ask the hiring manager? So when you're sat in someone, you think, do you know what, I quite like you, but if you ask me in a really impressive question right now, that might just tip the balance. What kind of cool questions do candidates or job seekers ask?
First of all, ask questions. That shows me you have curiosity and you want to understand. But that's it, right? Really, I want to be asked questions that help me explaining what the core of the purpose of the role is, and how. Not me suggesting how it should be performed, but what are the key drivers, what are the key deliverables, what success look like, that kind of thing is really to help me explain to the candidate what is asked of them. And I want to be sure that they really understand that, and they understand once they step into the role, if they're successful, what they can expect. I want that to be very, very open. I don't want to get surprises by someone who eventually I hire and turns out to be different from what I imagined in the interview process. And likewise, I don't want the candidate, if successful, to have surprises because when they come, they find something that I misrepresented.
Great. So 1 minute left. Any final advice or comments, parting shot from you, Andrea?
I'm really passionate about driving results. So that's one thing I don't compromise when I look at people. They have to have the same passion and drive to deliver that I have. So even if I look for diversity, as we mentioned, and different way of doing things, I need the end result to be very, very clear to everyone. So that's something that I push myself to deliver, and I want my teams to deliver too. So I guess that's sort of a closing comment. So the ambition of generating incremental revenues, adding the value, commercial value to what we do, is something that is incredibly important, and something I'm looking in people.
Fantastic. And I've just flashed Andrea's LinkedIn address on screen. So if anybody wants to connect to Andrea, if you're in the marketing world, or if you're a very serious business and need someone as senior as Andrea, then maybe you get lucky and get to have Andrea as your CMO. But for now, I just want to say super big thank you for sharing all of that with us, Andrea.
You're very welcome. It's been a big pleasure.
I often get to hear what the hiring manager is looking for, and feedback in interview processes nowadays is quite poor. So to get it from the other side of the fence, to actually hear it directly from the CMO is huge. So massive thank you to Andrea. And for everybody else, if you thought that was useful and helpful, then do a quick post on LinkedIn. Just saw #ExecEdgeShow with @JohnnyWalker and put your comment in. And two things will happen. One, we'll reply in your comments with a replay link to the show so other people can see it too. if somebody else had seen this show and thought it was useful, then you'd want them to pay it forward. So let's all do the same. And secondly, our network get alerted when we comment on people's posts, and there's 15,000 plus of those. And so some of those might be looking for someone like you. Who wouldn't want their eyeballs on your profile right now? That's about it from me and from Andrea. And next week, we've got a head of sourcing from the procurement world. And we're going to talk about how to buy things well, so you don't end up with a whole truckload of inventory in your warehouse, and how to make sure you get the right stuff, which is actually for product-led businesses, is critical, because every season, every year, you've got to go out and buy stuff and then hope that it sells. And getting that right is a lot trickier than I understood it to be. So I'm looking forward to next week's show. See you all next Thursday at 12:30. Take care.
Bye-bye.